My son is 11, and I want to make sure I have covered the basics. Story 1. If your son is old enough to use the lawnmower, show him how. Also, if you go to the stores, have him help at the cash register. Ask him to go get items from the aisle you are in. This will reinforce his independence early. Story 2. How to do everything in the house by himself. He might live alone one day, and he needs to know how to cook, clean, wash clothes, and more. Also, teach him about consent and, hopefully, to be tolerant of other people. Story 3. How to express my emotions properly. My father is a good man but made the mistake of thinking that one should never express anger. It is important to learn to show emotions as a man in a mature, controlled manner. Story 4. Well, I am still a teenager, so I do not know if I can really help. But I would say one thing my parents did and do well is just limiting social media, checking direct messages, and similar things to make sure I am not doing anything I should not. Story 5. Financial literacy and how to budget, save, and invest. Perhaps take him to a financial planner to review the basics if needed. This will be very useful, especially as college or university approaches. I know he is just 11 now, but time flies quickly. Story 6. Learning to fight at a good mixed martial arts gym so I never need to. I did this as a young adult, and it helps a man stand taller, be assertive but not aggressive, and avoid physical confrontations from a position of strength. It is really healthy for boys. Story 7. Household tasks, but I would have hated it as a boy, I think. The moment I moved out of my parents' house, I was pretty much on my own. I wish I had been better prepared for that. I am still learning things like washing my own clothes or cooking 10 years later. I guess most people do not know everything when they start living on their own, but I knew nothing, and it showed. Story 8. How to cook. My mother treated her kitchen as her personal playground, and I was not welcome. However, it turns out that knowing how to cook for yourself is very useful once you are an adult. Story 9. How to stand up for myself. As a boy, I was taught how to be emotionally intelligent, which I appreciate, but it also left me lacking when it came to myself. I was always very emotionally aware of other people and their needs, while ignoring my own. To me, being emotionally intelligent meant taking care of everyone else's emotions. Now I have come to realize how toxic this mindset is and have spent years retraining my brain to prioritize myself and stand up for myself. With that being said, teach him emotional intelligence, but also teach him to have boundaries and stand up for himself. Teach him emotional intelligence for his own sake, not just for the sake of others. Story 10. You might be surprised by this one. If applicable, have the talk about circumcision to make sure he knows, as it is terrible to find out through other methods. I have known 2 friends in real life who did not know until they were adults. If intact, great. If not, be aware that he might not like it, but it is better to find out now than in the middle of class or another situation if they do cover it and he feels like a parent kept it from him. Story 11. I wish my mother talked to me about sex, pornography, and similar topics. My mother never talked about these things with me. Another important topic would be practical matters like how to cook and how to do laundry. Story 12. I say this all the time. Lifting with your legs should be taught from elementary school. Proper form when lifting can prevent a lot of pain. I make myself think about how I am doing it, but I still lift incorrectly half the time. Story 13. Mechanics. My dad was a brilliant man who was not mechanically inclined at all. I taught myself the basics, but there is so much more I wish I could do. I am planning to enroll in a mechanics class at the local community college in the near future. Story 14. How to communicate. How curiosity should never be discouraged. That women are people and not above or below men. We all have skills but are not skilled in everything. Story 15. Some relationship advice. I wasted a 5-year relationship, which I later realized was mostly due to communication problems. It's awful. Story 16. How to fight and how to properly debate. Aside from social skills, which I struggle with, I can do most things to a moderate level, not great but capable. From cooking to sewing, building a computer, rebuilding an engine, and playing the violin as well as the piano. It may be arrogant, but when it comes to things like that, I have never found something I cannot do. Again, I may not be great, but I believe that if I care enough to focus, I could improve significantly, even though I am often easily distracted. Story 17. I always tried to teach my son basic values like honesty, integrity, and understanding social dynamics early on, appropriate to his age at each stage of his development. But that was just the first step. Now that he is almost 18, I am teaching him that his environment and his reactions to it, in terms of emotions, will constantly test him. Everyone and everything will always test him. Now comes the main lesson. No matter what, you must always stick to your learned principles in a positive way. In short, the main advice for a boy is inner discipline, both mental and emotional. That is the main tool of a man. My father did not tell me that verbally but showed me. The problem was I did not understand it correctly when I was a boy. Now I understand. Story 18. Make sure you teach him to be independent. You do not want him living with you while he is still in his 40s, jobless and without ambition. Teach him how to set goals and create a plan to achieve them. Teach him a strong work ethic and responsibility both at home and outside. Teach good morals, effective verbal communication skills, and good manners. If you live in the city, teach him that city life is not the only way to live. Teach the golden rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. Much could be said here, as many important values have been lost in society today. When I was a child, my parents wanted me to be better than they were. It was a tough challenge, and I do not think I ever surpassed them, but that was their hope. Also, teach him that video games have contributed to the decline in society. Story 19. Have you enrolled him in some self-defense classes? They are critically important for all boys and girls. These classes create confident children who will perform better in school due to the confidence they gain. I was bullied throughout my high school years. My 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, had taekwondo training before they went to high school. They are calm, confident, and successful children. Story 20. Finances. I am glad my parents and neighbors taught me to be self-sufficient in many areas. I am glad society taught me how to read people and defuse conflict without unnecessary violence. I really wish someone had drilled into my head the financial and emotional side of short-term versus long-term gains. Not just the logic behind it, but the unconscious habits and mindset, so it becomes a reflex, not something I constantly have to remind myself of. Story 21. I have been thinking a lot lately that there were many things I, as an adult, could not do because growing up, my parents said I could not. Not in a malicious way, but more in a way that meant it was hard for me and they did not want to push me too hard. Swimming, handwriting, science, and mathematics are all things I have discovered I am fully capable of, just not taught. Story 22. Personal finance. How important it is to save your money, how to be frugal, how to keep a good work ethic, and how to recognize a con when you see one. All of it. Then, when he is ready, how to invest the money he saved. I started saving way too late, and I am paying for it with a late retirement, if at all. Do not let your son do the same. Story 23. How to be seen as attractive. I learned most of what I know from the comments: kindness, cooking, how to take care of myself. But I was never seen as good enough as a person. It really affected my confidence and self-esteem to only ever be seen as a friend. So, how do I attract others or be seen as attractive? Story 24. Cooking. My mother did all the cooking, and eating out was a special reward. Naturally, when I started earning my own money, my course of action was to reward myself all the time. I did not learn that I actually quite liked cooking until my 30s. Story 25. Taxes, planning, finances, and what to do when your parents die. High school age may be more appropriate for that. Story 26. I wish I had received any kind of sex education. My family did not provide it, so all I heard was what they said at church. As an adult, I did not know how to discuss it with partners. It is still not easy for me at times. Story 27. I was never really taught how to deal with negative emotions. I was just encouraged not to have them. Sadness was bad. Anger was bad. Be happy. For the most part, I had a great childhood. My biological father died when my mother was pregnant with me. When I was younger, she told me something along the lines of, I stopped crying because nobody really cares. That prevented me from developing tools to deal with things later in life. Story 28. To respect women and understand that friendship does not equal romantic interest. I cringe thinking about this, but it took me until my late 20s to really understand that when a woman was friendly to me or wanted to be friends, it did not mean she was interested in me sexually or romantically. I had this warped view that any positive interaction was somehow a signal. Looking back, I feel genuine shame about how I treated women in my teens and 20s. I would misread normal friendliness, get frustrated when my advances were not welcomed, and probably made a lot of women uncomfortable without even realizing it. I became bitter about being friend-zoned instead of understanding that friendship is actually valuable in itself. I wish someone had taught me earlier that women are just people. They can enjoy your company, laugh at your jokes, and care about you without wanting anything romantic. I wish I had learned to value genuine friendships with women instead of always having this underlying agenda. The shift happened gradually through actually listening to women talk about their experiences and doing some hard self-reflection. Now some of my closest friends are women, and those friendships are incredibly meaningful to me in ways I never understood before. I know I cannot undo how I acted back then, but I hope sharing this might help someone else recognize these patterns in themselves sooner than I did. Story 29. How to deal with a multitude of negative social situations. How to approach the girls that I liked. How to embrace my own strengths and build confidence. Edit. How to file. Story 30. Look at the things you need to understand in your day-to-day life. Not your job, but the tasks everyone has to do. Basic cooking, cleaning, home and vehicle maintenance, lawn care, laundry, dishes, budgeting. In this day and age, given that everyone is on their devices so much, teach boys to interact with the public. My kids have been ordering their own food at restaurants since they were 4, and if they need assistance at a store, I make them ask an employee. General discipline and hustle cannot be overemphasized. Delayed gratification and incredibly hard work are what make most people successful. Work, be frugal, save, invest, and work harder. I had a pretty good foundation in all of those things, but the one thing I wish I had been taught better is how women work and what attracts them. I spent a long time figuring that out on my own, and a head start would have made a big difference. Story 31. All normal, independent things. I have 3 teenage boys, and life is much easier than what I hear a lot of people experience with their husbands. If a 12-year-old can do a load of laundry without any issues, so can your grown partner. Story 32. How to treat women like humans deserving of care and respect. I hate the fact that I basically spent my 20s viewing women as lesser than because I would have had a lot more fun and better relationships had I learned this much earlier in life. I at least feel good about the fact that I eventually got there. There are many men my age who still have not and probably never will. Story 33. The less enjoyable chores like washing the dishes or general cleaning, mowing the lawns, or taking out the bins were always my responsibility as I became the man of the house at a young age. However, after getting married, I became more relaxed and less attentive to the indoor chores. Story 34. Teach him how to solve things himself. For example, if the car will not start, there are plenty of video instructions available. It is amazing to learn, and it made me very independent. Try things that look difficult. They are often hard only until you get the basics. Do not help people who will not help themselves. Story 35. Discipline and growing from failure. I had little to no discipline and was expected to figure life out by myself. Also, if you get loud with him, you must have a valid and reasonable point. Otherwise, you will someday be the angry parent who does not understand him even if he really needs your support. Story 36. To better express my emotions instead of keeping them to myself. There are times when it is appropriate, but now I cannot express them properly, if at all. I think them, but do not feel them. Story 37. How to recognize and control your emotions. Boys are often only allowed to feel anger. Most of my students still cannot sit with their feelings without lashing out violently. Boys feel everything girls do, but are never given the space to experience their emotions. Let him feel his feelings. Teach him to describe them, sit with them, and understand them. This teaches emotional intelligence and forms the building blocks of some of the most important skills he will use daily in adulthood. Story 38. 1. Manners and etiquette. Men and women are similar but different. One thing I have never enjoyed about life is that, as a boy, you are almost expected to just be a little trouble that people have to deal with. Teach boys manners and the benefits and privileges that having good manners and etiquette bring in life, and they will follow. 2. Work. I have a fairly good relationship with effort toward education, but completely wish my parents had a different approach toward vocation. This may not apply to everyone, but speaking solely from experience, when your boy is able to start earning an income, be prepared for him to seek his independence. Story 39. That I mattered. I know that sounds pitiful, but I was passed around a lot after my parents' deaths and attending boarding schools because my dad left a small trust fund meant for college. However, it was largely spent by others taking care of me before I turned 18. I don't think the money was misspent. I never wanted for anything serious, but I often felt unwelcome everywhere I was, as if I was unimportant. I acted out, stole, manipulated, and generally leaned into the idea subconsciously that if I was unwelcome, I would make sure it was justified. Then a cook at one of my boarding schools took me seriously. He treated me like an equal and like I had a mind full of ideas worth considering and discussing. He made me feel like I mattered. We talked about everything when I helped him prepare the school meals, which was mostly just cutting vegetables or other busy work. It mattered more that he never once belittled or dismissed me, except for playful jests. It changed me so quickly that people thought it was an act. Instead, it was me dropping the act. Story 40. How to listen to my body and feelings. Many people, including me, do things they are told and use a compass based on what they should be doing, not what they want to do. Everyone should be able to answer the questions, what are you feeling right now? And what do you want to do? Story 41. Proper coping skills and methods that do not involve substance abuse or medication. How to distinguish between emotional responses and practical responses in disagreements. Story 42. Teach him an ethical framework. Not just rules, but something he can use to reflect on his decisions and grow. For example, did what I do today cause any harm to myself or others? Was what I did out of greed, hatred, or confusion? Teach him how to discern ethical people to spend time with. Who a boy or man spends time with regularly will have a massive influence on his thoughts, feelings, and actions. If he falls in with the wrong crowd, he will likely do bad things. So teach him to discern who to spend time with and who to avoid, not based on external appearances, race, religion, or similar factors, but based on speech and bodily actions. Teach him about sex too, perhaps when he is 12, properly. Don't rush anything, even if he is embarrassed. Include related topics such as enthusiastic consent, boundaries, dating, and learning to take rejection gracefully. Story 43. Emotional regulation skills. How to connect with yourself internally, how to motivate yourself, and how to build the life you want to live. Story 44. Self-defense, basic cooking, basic car maintenance, and basic home maintenance are all important skills I wish I had learned earlier in life. Story 45. One thing I still watch, even though I am 40 and have many women friends who use strong language, is that there are certain words I will not say. This is all relative, though. A good suggestion would be to advise the young man to be mindful of his language in the presence of women. Story 46. Spanish. My family speaks it fluently but only spoke English at home. They used Spanish when they wanted to talk about something behind my back without me understanding. I cannot help but wonder what other friends I would have made, what other opportunities would have been open to me in life if I were bilingual like they were. Story 47. He is 11 years old. This is a good age to promote good hygiene and grooming. Dress him well and help him develop self-confidence. There is a hormonal storm brewing. Make sure he is on the right path. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.